Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome the members of council, staff, and members of the public to discuss the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment and call this meeting to order. Some of the details: the owner is Southside Construction Management, Inc. The agent is Zelinka Primo Taylor Whitney. Description is outlined on the application, and it's known municipally as 4055 Oil Heritage Road. Now, just for everyone's information, this is a public information session held for the purpose of public engagement under the Planning Act with the public, council, and staff. During a public information session, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any member in any way that materially advances the business or decision-making of council. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. The town of Petrolia is located on lands associated with the Huron Tract Treaty number 29 of 1827. We express gratitude for the land where we live, work, and play, and we are committed to working respectfully with the land and the Indigenous peoples who've called this land home.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Bear with me, this is a little longer, but I'll read through it. The purpose of the meeting is to afford the public an opportunity under the Planning Act to receive information relating to the proposed amendments to the Town of Petrolia zoning bylaw and official plan amendment, and provide input to town staff and council. Amendment to the Town of Petrolia's official plan and zoning bylaw 63 of 2017 as it applies to lands municipally known as 4055 Oil Heritage Road. The proposed official plan amendment seeks to redesignate a portion of the subject property from highway commercial to residential and redesignate a portion of the subject property from residential to major open space. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment would rezone the subject property from future development, highway commercial, and environmental protection zones to a site-specific residential 1 R1-9 withholding provisions. A site-specific residential 3 R3-9 withholding provisions and open space zones. The applicant has requested that the site-specific R1-9 zoning be replaced to require a minimum lot frontage of 12 meters, a minimum lot area of 320 square meters, and a minimum exterior side yard of 4.5 meters. The applicant also requests the site-specific R3-9 zoning be replaced for freehold townhouse dwellings to require a minimum front yard setback of 6 meters, a minimum lot area of 230 square meters, a minimum exterior side yard of 4.5 meters, and a minimum rear yard of 7.5 meters. The proposed development consists of approximately 426 total residential units, consisting of approximately 332 single detached dwellings and 94 freehold townhouse dwellings. The proposed development complies with all provisions of the R1, R3, and open space zones applicable to the subject property. This meeting is specific to the application noted above. Any comments you wish to submit in relation to the draft plan or subdivision agreement or other item not related to the above application shall not be done at this time. It'd have to be at the specific time later on. Submissions off topic and not in relation to the proposed application shall not be brought forward. At this time, I'd like to introduce the members of council to the public. On your right, my left, is Councillor Hyatt, Councillor Patel, Deputy Mayor Field, and on Councillor Clark, and Councillor Welsh, and I'm Brad Loosely, Mayor. I'll ask Mrs. Pearson to introduce the staff present, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I am going to start to my right. We have Larissa Ellsworth, our Director of Marketing, Arts, and Communication, our Senior Planner, Mr. Trevor Benjamins, our Deputy Clerk, Jess Smith, our CAO, Rick Charlebois, our Director of Public Works and Operations, Mike Thompson, our Director of Parks, Recreation, and Facilities, Miss Julie Bullock, and I'm your clerk, Mandy Pearson.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Pearson regarding the required notice, please.
Thank you. So all of these were conducted per the notice that was also attached to this notification for the public meeting on the Petrolia Independent, June 16th and 23rd, 2024. Email and mail to the required agencies on June 4th, 2024. The website and public notice was posted publicly on June 4th, 2024, traditional mail to surrounding properties on June 4th, 2024, and a sign placed on the property on June 3rd, 2024, therefore satisfying all requirements under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Trevor Benjamins, Senior Planner, regarding the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application for 4055 Oil Heritage Road for his report, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, and members of the public. The applications presented before you are an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application. The property, as mentioned, is owned by Southside Construction Management, and the agent on the applications is Zelinka Priamo. So the subject property is located in the southeast corner of the town of Petrolia. It's across the road from the former waste disposal site, really on the west side of Oil Heritage Road. It's an irregularly shaped parcel, and it's approximately 76.6 acres in size, about 31 hectares. The current use of the property is it's vacant. It's being used as farmland that's associated with crop production. It's currently designated in the town of Petrolia official plan as residential and highway commercial along Oil Heritage Road. It is currently zoned future development, highway commercial, and environmental protection. North of the subject property, there are some existing residential land comprising primarily low-density single detached dwellings. West of this property is lands that are designated in the official plan as residential in the town of Petrolia official plan, and therefore would most likely be a future residential subdivision. East of this property, across the road from on Oil Heritage, is the former waste disposal site, and north of that is vacant commercial land. South of this property is some natural heritage features, some residential designated land, as well as the proposed location for the stormwater management pond, as members of the public can see on this from the concept plan. I just want to note quickly that the stormwater management pond is located outside of the area, subject to these specific development applications at this time. They are not owned by Southside, and they are owned by an adjacent landowner. So the purpose of these applications is to correctly designate and rezone the property for a future residential subdivision. And this development consists of approximately 426 total units. Now that's broken down to 332 single detached dwellings and 94 freehold townhouse dwellings. The concept plan also has a central park about 0.748 hectares. That's about 1.83 acres in size. There's a couple access points off of Oil Heritage Road, as well as a road that would connect to the westerly adjacent future subdivision. The proposed concept plan has 10 new residential streets labeled A through J on the concept plan. As mentioned, the stormwater management pond is not located on this property, but is approximately 1.4 hectares. That's 3.6 acres in size, and is under different ownership. The studies submitted with the applications are a concept plan of subdivision, a D4 environmental study, a planning justification report, a stormwater management report, a functional servicing report, a traffic impact study, an engineering master plan, and MDS calculations. Briefly on the official plan amendment. So the official plan amendment would redesignate a portion of the subject property from highway commercial, and that's the area along Oil Heritage, to residential. And it would also redesignate a portion of the land currently designated residential to major open space, and that designation changes for the future park. for the zoning bylaw amendment. I won't read all the amendments for each zone, but as stated, it will be a site-specific R1 zone and a site-specific R3 zone, and the R3 zone would be for the freehold townhouse dwellings. There would also be an open space zoning bylaw amendment reflective of the official plan amendment, and again, that's the location of the future park. Development applications under the Planning Act are required to be consistent with provincial policy statement, conform to the official plans in effect. In this instance, that's the County of Lambton official plan and the Town of Petrolia official plan, and they are to conform and comply with the Town of Petrolia's comprehensive zoning bylaw. So I'm just going to speak very quickly to each one of those documents. So is it consistent with provincial policy? Yes, it's anticipated to utilize future municipal services, which can reduce the consumption of land and also help reduce servicing costs. The Town of Petrolia is an identified settlement area, which the PPS states shall be the focus of growth and development. These applications promote efficient development land use patterns, which sustain the financial well-being of the Town of Petrolia, and it will increase the mix and range of housing provided within the town. As for the County of Lambton official plan, the County of Lambton official plan designates Petrolia as an urban center, which the OP identifies as the area where most growth is to be located. It would incorporate compact forms of housing options on slightly smaller lots than what is found in the immediate area, but would allow different levels of affordability for different people with different levels of household income. The traffic impact study concludes that, assuming there's no reductions on Oil Heritage Road, that the northbound left-hand turn lane is required to access the subdivision, but otherwise there was no concerns. And the D4 environmental study was required in relation to the former waste disposal site, stated that these applications will not impact the proposed development. As for the Town of Petrolia official plan, the Town of Petrolia official plan encourages an appropriate range and mix of housing options, which the proposed development would meet. It allows for various densities and affordability levels, as I mentioned. They would be the medium density townhomes are located in closer proximity, kind of along Oil Heritage. This is a higher order road, and it really provides an appropriate transition of housing forms, since higher densities should be closer to higher order roads. The development would also have adequate off-street parking spaces and integrate a public park for the future subdivision. As for the Town of Petrolia zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw amendments that were listed would also have holding provisions, and those holding provisions are there to ensure that there's adequate municipal servicings brought to the subject property and would be removed after the draft plan of subdivision process. The proposed reduction to the front yard depths still allow for adequate parking, off-street parking outside of the municipal right-of-way. And the requested amendments to permit reduced lot frontage, lot area, the rear yard setback, and the exterior side yard setback allow for sufficient and compact development proposal, which will help minimize the consumption of land and can reduce servicing costs. The reductions to exterior side yard setbacks are generally considered appropriate in modern subdivision designs, and that do allow some more flexibility on corner lots while still ensuring safe viewing distance and site triangles. So in conclusion, planning staff supports the adoption of the official plan amendment and approval in principle of the zoning bylaw amendment application. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
We'll probably do that later on. I'd like to, first of all, thank you for your report. I'd like to move on now regarding the public input. But before I do that, I'll ask Mrs. Pearsons regarding any written information that has come in regarding this project.
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, we had received 3 written items. One was received from Mr. Peter Buckley requesting that he be provided follow-up to any correspondence that took place from this meeting. St. Clair Region Conservation Authority provided comment in overview under their jurisdiction for site characteristics. Mr. Walt Brand submitted correspondence today, which was attached and circulated. And that is all the received written correspondence.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I just wanted to add on the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, they stated they had no objection or concerns too. All right, at this time, I'll open it up to the public. Anyone here wishing to address council to please come forward to the podium. Please come forward. State your name and address, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm here to represent the applicant. Is this an appropriate time for me to speak?
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members, town staff, and members of the public. My name is Taylor Whitney, and I'm an intermediate planner with Zelenka Priama Limited, the planning consultant representing Southside Construction Management, who is the landowner of 4055 Oil Heritage Road. Mr. Benjamins has done an excellent job of providing an overview of the application, so I will try to refrain from repeating myself too much.
Excuse me, can I ask you to speak right into the mic? Yeah, thank
Is
you.
better?
Yeah.
Okay. I would also like to thank staff for their work on this project to date. It's taken several years of discussions and coordination to get these applications in front of you today. I would like to address the questions surrounding the stormwater management pond while I'm up here. The location of the proposed swim pond was determined in consultation with the adjoining landowner as well as the SCRCA. And there is an existing agreement in place between the two landowners. And the intention is that the pond will ultimately be dedicated to the town upon registration of the plan of subdivision. Preliminary design was completed in consultation with the SCRCA, which included a review of the existing ground conditions, soils investigations, and the current drainage patterns. And the SCRCA have confirmed that they are satisfied with the conceptual stormwater management facility, location, outlet, and general configuration based on these investigations. It should also be noted that a Section 28 permit will be required from the Conservation Authority before construction begins. We've had the opportunity to review the report and the bylaws that were prepared by staff, and we appreciate and agree with the recommendation for approval. And I am available and happy to answer any other questions that you may have. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, just hang on. Yeah, thank you for coming and addressing council. I'll open it up to council. Any questions at this time? Councillor Wells.
I have some questions about the change in the environmental protection to, is it the R1? This is the correct map up in front of me here.
Pardon?
R19.
So,
Me, it doesn't seem that it's consistent with, oh, I don't know who I'm supposed to ask here, sorry.
That's okay. You can direct the question either way, and we can both do our
Okay.
best to address it.
we have to keep, Councillor Wells, we'll have to keep it to just questions from her report at this time. Okay,
From Trevor's.
From hers.
no, from hers at this time.
Questions for Trevor.
All right, any other questions from council regarding this report? Okay, if not, thank you for coming to address council.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to address council at this time, please come forward. Please state your name and address, please, for the record.
Okay, my name's Krista Brand. My address is 4185 Oil Heritage Road, Petrolia. Dear Brad and councilors, I have concerns about the rezoning of the aforementioned lands along Highway 21 corridor. If you wish to draw people into these developments, you need proper commercial amenities to serve the new taxpayer. As it stands now, there are limited areas of land for commercial development in and around Petrolia. Eliminating the commercial land will exacerbate the issue. Businesses like to locate near services. To rezone this commercial corridor is a short-sighted plan for future expansion of Petrolia. The Highway 21 is the most suitable land left in Petrolia for commercial development. The only entity that benefits from this rezoning would be the developer. The developer can adjust his boundaries to accommodate the existing commercial zoning along the highway. Municipal politicians are elected to protect the best interest of the people living in the town, not the developers. Council and Brad, I'd just like to say you guys are in a great spot. You can say no to this rezoning, and you can have both residential and commercial in the same subdivision that you're going to build. Thank you.
Okay, just before you go, any questions from council? Mr. Brand? Okay, thank you. Oh,
And if she can leave that, Larissa, that would be great.
yeah, could you leave your report maybe with Larissa or and we can get you a copy just so we've got it for the record, please. Oh. Thank you for coming to address council. Anyone else wishing to address council, please come forward, state your name and address, please.
Good evening. It's Mark Cole, 328 Juniper Crescent, Petrolia, Ontario, resident for a long time here. I've read the report, talked to the planner the other day. My concern comes back to, sorry.
Speak into the mic. Yeah.
Okay. My concern comes back to the changes on how does it benefit the town? Is there any grants that the town, by increasing or decreasing the square footage of the lots, increasing the residency, is the town getting any grants associated? Because I know there's a government process where if you're increasing development, are we getting money to the town to develop this process right now?
I'll turn it over to our treasurer, but I'm not aware of any at this time, but I'll ask Mr.
Because I know
Charlebois.
there's an issue around the, everybody says we're short of development. So does this come into that agreement with the federal government?
Mr. Charlebois, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Yeah, you are correct, but it's for the larger municipalities. Basically, the ones over 50,000, there's provincial and federal money to help them.
Okay.
Depending on where the housing crisis goes, we could eventually get enough funds.
Okay. So my next question would be, has the town considered or even thought about maybe only allowing half the residential development to be decreased in the lot development? I know there's a tax base associated, and what it doesn't state in his development process is what he's asking for versus what it was without the decreased lot size. My concern is that, well, there may be people out there that want a larger lot and a development where they could use some backyard versus increasing the tax base. So if you go from 460 down to 390 or 350, I know it doesn't affect, well, it affects the developer's profit bottom line, but it also affects the town's tax base. But you may detract the type of person that wants to buy and purchase out in that spot. So if you offer them more land, you may have a different clientele coming in. And I'm not going to peg people, and you got townhouses and stuff, but as soon as you start reducing the lot size and that stuff, it may change your clientele that are trying to come to that site. So my concern lies with considering maybe half of the zoning bylaw and doing that and saying, listen, there's a group that may want a larger lot and changing that. That is one consideration that I think should be looked at.
And just to speak to that, council can consider that when they look at the approving the bylaw,
Okay.
which will be at the next regular meeting of council.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to bring up is the fact that there's things that need to be considered just to say, okay, after we leave here, that you're just going to approve it based on the requests that they're asking for right now. So that would be a thing I want. The question, other thing, I think I talked to the planner about it, but if we go to max capacity out here, and I don't know what the rest of the lots in town, but we got other developers wanting to develop. But if we're going to push our infrastructure, which is wastewater, hydro, sewage, and we cater to increasing this lot size out at the west or east end now, how does that affect our infrastructure? Everybody knows if you run something to max capacity, if we don't allow any kind of financing, development, or surcharges to increase our capacity, then you're affecting the tax base that's already here. So I think the town needs to reconsider or consider how much they want to really allow, because there's other developers already got properties purchased and bought, as opposed to just granting this to this developer. I think the biggest thing I talked about was, and I don't know if that map up there was, there was a plot plan. You were showing the wastewater storm pond, and we talked about routings of sanitary storm and all that other stuff. But you just did a big development on Derby Street, and I don't know whether anything will get tied into that, but we all know that there's already issues with the pumping station at the creek, at the low point in Muskrat Flats, where you want to call them down there. And I've seen pumps and everything else down there already. So we did talk, but we don't know which way they're going to go. So it's important that the town, before they approve the 440, whatever they're asking, that we know where that's going to consider going, because it means a huge change to his project. And it also affects a large percentage of people on Derby Street and the subdivisions back in there, depending on how they wrote that. So
I can start to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to mention, as far as water and sewage capacity, we're in good shape. But there is concerns and regarding, and I'll maybe have Mr. Charlebois add to that, or Mr. Thompson, regarding maybe getting something large enough to take their stormwater. And I don't know if Mr. Charlebois, if you can add to that we might have to do for that.
I can add a little bit more, but I mean, Mike is probably the best, but they're going to have their own storm pond as was explained in the map there.
So
I have lots of
on that, so I
capacity.
appreciate your comments about the stormwater pond, but everybody knows that with global warming, all this stuff, and we see the issues going on around the country with water infrastructure failing. But the stormwater pond, I don't know if that was based on 1 in 25 years, 1 in 10 years, 1 in 15 years.
Oh.
Council should look at that, because if it's 1 in 10 years or 1 in 50 years, it's changing.
Yep.
And if they put a small pond in and if it overflows, now you're dealing with stuff that may not be capable. So I don't know what their proposal was, but that needs to be looked at maybe a little further.
Yeah.
I just want to speak to, a lot of those issues will be dealt with the actual plan of subdivision.
Okay.
So that they'll have to deal with that. Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything you'd like to add?
You just said exactly what I was
Oh,
going to say.
okay.
Thank you.
So that will be dealt with the draft plan and the
So,
plan of
but I
subdivision.
guess the question is, you're considering right now the residential lot sizes right now. So if you tentatively agree with the right to reject it, that's okay. But if you agree to go to the 450 and we have these issues and you haven't considered what I've suggested, that's where my concern was. So that's why it's brought up tonight. So I just want it documented. Basically, it says that, there's a lot of people around who have been long-term residents and are going to be affected by construction, development. And we know there's water issues behind there off of Dutch Street.
A lot of those will be dealt with in the plan of subdivision. All right, anything else?
No, is there any
Okay.
questions? from
Yeah,
the-
I'll just open it up to council. Does council have any questions regarding Mark's presentation?
Okay.
If not, thank you for coming to
Appreciate
address
your time.
council.
Thank you.
Anyone else at this time wishing to come forward to address council? Okay, Walt, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Walter Brand. I live at 4185 on Heritage Road. I have a property there that contains 20 lots. This development is immediately south of my property. And Brown Street is between my property and this development. Now, Brown Street is not a through street. It does not go all the way to intersect with Mutual. The developer in his plan, as was visible on the screen, has made extra long lots on his road that will prevent any former connection or any later connection of Brown Street to Mutual. And this should be resolved before this project is approved. And I didn't want to bring this up later because it should be approached now.
Okay.
So I'd like some answers as to what's gonna be the fate of Brown Street, where it doesn't
Okay,
reach
first,
Mutual.
I'll first ask council, then maybe I'll ask the planner if he has something. Does council have anything to add to speak to that? If
I don't
not,
think the planner has even noticed it, but it's a flaw in the plan.
well,
the-
let's.
The
let's
lots
not-
in that area on the west side will be extra long lots, which will ruin the possibility of an extension of Brown Street to reach Mutual. And this should be resolved before anything is
Okay.
permanent.
Mr. Benjamins, can you speak to that, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship,
If you can put
it's
that
important.
back up there, I'll show you where it is.
Yeah, no, just a second. Okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's important for members of the public and council to remember that the concept plan on the screen is still a concept plan. It can be subject to lot sizes. Lot sizes could change. Concepts can change
I
before
realize
it's a
that.
draft plan of subdivision. So we can take your comments into consideration, and when we're working with the developer on preparing a draft plan of subdivision, we'll I've noted your comments and we'll speak with
Which
the
will
developer about that.
severely impact my property because I'll have a dead end street and my 20 lots will be of no value to anybody. It's currently farmed and it's open. So that must be taken into consideration. Can you take that into consideration?
I can take that into consideration in consultation with the developer and,
Will you
and their agent.
notify me what your decision is?
Yep, you'll be notified at the time of the draft plan of subdivision process, but I can take your name and number and I can give you my contact information and we can discuss how we're going to resolve that after
Okay,
this meeting.
has to be resolved.
No, thank you for your comments.
Okay,
Thank you for your interest.
thank you, Mr. Brand, for
You're
coming to address council. Anyone else here wishing to address council at this time? Okay, please state your name and address for the record, please.
John Wilson, and me and my wife are actually co-owners of 4055 Oil Heritage Road, because that's our community address on my laneway into it. Long story short, it's not a problem. I have no problem whatsoever with Southside's plan to remove the commercial designation along Oil Heritage. I just wish I had known, so I could have put in the same application to remove it off my piece of property. I protested it back when they were putting it in place, and I was told by the planner at that time it was just a guideline, it wouldn't matter until we actually designated it whatever. Apparently somebody's designated it commercial on a piece of ground down there that nobody's going to do anything with, and I can't now do anything with because it's now commercial, and I was told it would take an act of God to have it removed.
I'm not aware of that. Mr. Benjamins, can you try and speak to that, please?
Yes, through your worship, the south property is designated residential and highway commercial, very similar to this lot along Oil Heritage. You can change that designation, but you will need supporting studies to remove that designation, similar to what the developer
It should have
presented
never
this
been
evening.
put on to start with down on that hole, because it's a hole. That's what it is. And like, there's nobody gonna put a medical center, a grocery store. We mentioned putting a barn down there for a pitching thing, and can't put a barn down because it's not a farm. So that's all I basically have to say right now.
Okay.
All right.
Before you go, Mr. Wilson, any questions from council? If not, Mr. Wilson, thank you for coming to address this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to address council at this time regarding this planning report? I think what I'll do, I will back up though for council if they have any questions for the planner at this time. I think Councillor Welsh, go ahead.
Specifically changing the
Speak
environment,
into the mic, please, Liz.
specifically changing the environmental protection zone to the, whatever it's gonna be changed to, the R something or other, the residential. And so it would appear to me that it isn't consistent with the PPS. Or the county official plan.
Liz, you need to speak into the mic, please. We can't hear you.
How do we justify the change in that from environmental protection to residential?
Through your worship, the subject property is not identified on Schedule C of the official plan as holding any area of natural significance, whether it be a significant woodlot, wetlanding like that. So it's not really identified on the town of Petrolia's official plan as an environmental protection overlay. That overlay is really is a reflection of the southerly adjacent woodlot that is there and is designated as a significant woodlot. It's kind of an overextension of that woodlot, but from the aerial photography, you can also see that there is no woodlot on the property. It really is a vacant farm field.
Councillor Wells? Yeah.
So it's not environmental protection?
It is zoned environmental protection. I do not think that there is adequate reason that it should be zoned environmental protection. And for that reason, I support the change from environmental protection to R3, as there's really no natural significance within that area that's identified through our town's official plan.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Oh, Councillor Wells, are you okay with that?
Really, but I'll take it for now.
Okay. Any other questions from
Your
council?
worship, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing the understanding. There's a lot of feedback from other areas in the room.
No, no questions at this time. No, no, you had the opportunity to speak. Council, any questions from council to the planner? Go ahead, Councillor Hyatt.
So either for Mr. Benjamins or the unrepresentative of the developer. sorry, Miss Winter?
Whitney.
Sorry. So just a question on the open space zoning. Like if I look at the draft plan, it looks like the open space zoning is going to be on a major road or the main entry point into the subdivision. As a dad, I wonder why we would put the park on one of the busiest roads going into the subdivision. So why would we put the open zoning there as opposed to maybe one of the, less busy roads in the subdivision?
Are you addressing that to the planner?
Either the planner or Miss Whitney.
I'll go to the planner first. Mr. Benjamins, go
You can
ahead.
take that through, your worship, through Councillor Hyatt. The location, the developer does have some flexibility on where they can, where they would like to see the park. It is in a central location, which does provide access to the entire subdivision. It is also in proximity to the westerly adjacent property, which will be a future subdivision. That being said, it is on Street C, which Street C will be a busier road connecting to the westerly adjacent property. So I can't speak specifically why it was placed there, and that those conversations may have been had to pre-consultation meetings before I was here. So if the agent has any further comments, they can share them. But those are my thoughts of why the park is placed where it was.
Councillor Hyatt, do you have a rebuttal or are you okay with that?
I'm wondering if we could hear from the developer as to why the reasoning is for that location.
Yeah, come to the podium, please. Yeah.
Thank you, and through your worship. Mr. Benjamin did sum it up nicely. It was intended to be a central location to the development and also to serve the future development adjacent. My understanding is that there is no major park space proposed as part of that development, so this would also serve them. So it's intended to just service the most amount of people.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask one more time from council. Any questions to the developer to our planner? Councillor Welsh.
How do the setbacks that they're requesting compare to other subdivisions within the town of Petrolia? And I guess perhaps more recent subdivisions?
Through your worship to Councillor Welsh, this is a new built form for the town of Petrolia. There is currently no lots that I am aware of with this specific size of lots. There may not even be lots this size within the immediate area, even the county of Lambton. I will say, though, that this is a fairly modern subdivision form, and there is various development applications throughout southwestern Ontario that have seen lot sizes similar to this with reduced lot frontage, reduced front yard setback, exterior side yards at 4.5 meters. And it does really allow some flexibility for developers while still ensuring that the general compliance with the zoning bylaw is upheld.
Councillor Wells, do you have a rebuttal or are you okay with that?
Are those, no, I have another question. Are those generally in larger urban centers, or are there some that can be cited that are more rural like us and small?
Through your worship to Councillor Welsh, I can say that I have had the privilege of working on development applications in rural settlement areas such as the town of Petrolia that have used similar lot sizes. And I can send the councillor a list of where those are, not strictly or large urban centers such as the City of London or City of St. Thomas, City of Sarnia near us, but smaller urban centers with populations probably similar or slightly larger than ours.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this time, I'm going to just announce that. Councillor Hyatt.
Thank you. Through you. I'm just wondering if there's any standard guidelines that outline, how much commercial zoning space we need to have versus the population of the town of Petrolia. Say, eventually after the build, it's 10,000, 10,000 people. Is there a guideline that says you need to have XXX, square meters of zoning available or potential, or is there anything along those lines that outlines that?
Mr. Benjamins, go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Hyatt. So typically commercial land needs is done at the time of the town's or county's official plan review. And how that's done is that's done through a comprehensive study where they look at population projections in addition to employment projections for a certain area. So that is something that should be included in the next official plan update, which we've updated the Town of Petrolia official plan last year. However, the town's official plan does require a land employment land need study for changes from commercial or employment lands to residential. However, in consultation with the developer, they did provide adequate justification for the reason for changing the commercial designated land to residential, in that this property has sat vacant as commercial for quite some time. That there are a number of commercial uses which may not be suited to the limitations of the way the commercial designation sits only along oil heritage line, quite limited in size. There is existing highway commercial designated land across the road that is currently vacant and can be developed. So there appears to be a surplus of highway commercial designated land within the town of Petrolia.
Councillor Hyatt, are you okay with that?
Thank you.
Councillor Patel.
Thank you. Through you, your worship. With the, to the planner.
Yeah,
Sorry. So with the decrease in lot sizes, I would assume that the increase of population would also increase with more residents being built in this area. So with that projection of how many residents are going to occupy this space, does the town's current services provide enough services to cover that area as we increase?
Mr. Benjamins, go ahead.
There was a functional servicing report and a stormwater management report submitted with the applications, and upon my review, they are subject to the town's engineer review at the time. That's really a question that capacity will be looked at the time of the draft plan of subdivision process. There is also holding provisions on these lots, and holding provisions will not be removed until it's confirmed by the town's engineer that there is adequate capacity to service these lots. So this is also a big subdivision. It's 400 lots. I assume maybe the developer's agent can speak to this, but there's probably going to be built in phases, 100 lots at a time, and it does take some time to build a development this large. So those are, as the town grows, infrastructure will have to grow with it, and engineers will have to provide infrastructure.
Okay. Councillor Patel, are you okay with that, or do you have a rebuttal?
Just one more comment. So being that the preliminary drafts are in place, if we find out later on that provisions need to be made, will there be adjustments to make sure that everything is compliant down the road, that it may have to go back to a change in lot sizes at that point? Or what options would be available?
Through your worship to Councillor Patel, if there is capacity issues, they will not be able to remove holding provisions. They will have to, the lands will not be developed. And if the developer so chooses, they can change their applications at any time. They can, as I said, the concept plan can change. Just because they're asking for a minimum lot size does not mean their concept plan, draft plan cannot change the lot size. They still could make some lots relatively a little bit larger than the minimums outlined with that they're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to state at this time, our next regular council meeting on July 8th, we'll decide and discuss this. And I want to just mention that if you'd like to be notified of the decision or any future information related to this application or public information meeting, please provide the clerk with your full name, mailing address, or email address. And I'll declare this meeting closed. No.
Still had her hand up. Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Wells.
It's actually a question for the clerk. Because this is the only public meeting for this particular item at this time, is there a mechanism by which that will allow, obviously some public members have some more questions that will allow for that to happen?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the only public meeting in relation to
No,
this.
I'm well aware of that. I mean, at this meeting.
So the draft plan of subdivision, whenever draft plan comes forward, additional public meetings are held under the Planning Act. So this is in relation obviously to the OPA and the ZBA. So when it comes to the draft plan, which a lot of the questions this evening kind of were indicative of, that opportunity will come up at that time, and everyone in the circulation also receives that same notification of when draft plan of subdivision meetings are held for the public.
Yeah, and those present can certainly come to our next public meeting, and there'll be an opportunity to speak at that time. Okay, I'm going to declare this meeting officially closed.
There is a form that you can complete. Yes.